briefly spoke about this yesterday, how the NFL is considering what they call flexing Thursday night football games, which means, based on how teams are playing, what their record is, they want to make marquee matchups. Because, Rob, we've seen it. A lot of these Thursday night games year were terrible. And so now they want to be able to choose, right? Like if they thought Denver was going to be great going into the season because they got Russell Wilson and they put them on, on a Thursday night game, and then they find out they're horrible, they want to be able to switch it out for a team that's good. Now, they did decide to table that until next year, but they still are going to allow teams to play multiple Thursday night football games. They could play as many as 3, which to me is terrible. And you and I have talked about how the NFL, for all the talk about player safety, the moves they're making betray that. Increasing it to 17 games when it wasn't necessary. Now the players went along with it. We just, their union we talk about it. It's just bad. But they went along with it because they wanted more money. But there are ways you could get more money without having to play a 17th game.
Exactly.
Right. But they also, Rob, the Thursday night football, listen to this quote, and I want to put it all in context because John Mara did the Giants owner, Rob.
I don't say it that often, but bravo to him.
I think bravo on one hand, but I don't know if you heard this other quote. He did point out that they needed to run this by the Health and Safety Committee and vet it, and the competition committee. So you want to see how it, would help. Is it all right for players to do this? But his first quote, Rob, was this: at some point, can we please give some consideration to the people who are coming to our games? People make plans to go to these games weeks and months in advance and 15 days ahead of time to say, sorry, that game you were planning on taking your kids to Sunday at 1, now it's on Thursday night. What are we thinking about? Now, I'm fine with that because I do agree in taking the fans into consideration. I just hope he didn't say that and the player's quote is like a throwaway quote. Like that was an afterthought.
Well, he did mention it, which I understand what you're saying, and we know that the owners. At least I don't believe in my heart that they care that much about the player's safety because players are interchangeable. They don't look at them that way. The owners get to stick around for 40 and 50 and 70 years and own the team, right?
And the players come and go, family and all.
Right, they come and go, and it's like, okay, yeah, you play for the Lions, 40 years ago, and the Ford family still owns the team. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like stuff like that. So, but I was saying bravo that this whole notion of just flip-flopping things and people have paid money and made hotel reservations, Chris, and and all that stuff is just unfair. It just is because there are going to be some bad games on Thursday night. Even if you switch the schedule, do a flex. Right. They're bad games. They're bad games in every sport. They're going to be bad games. You can't get around that. It also tells you that maybe having the Thursday night games and why you got so many bad ones too is the players aren't recovered fast enough or they need more time or whatever it is. It could be that, but they don't want to explore that and look at that to think they need a week to recuperate. Or
let me give you this quote on because you remember yesterday, or I think it was even before yesterday, Patrick Mahomes, when the news came out about more Thursday night games, Patrick Mahomes tweeted out a facepalm emoji, and Roger Goodell was asked about that, Rob, and here's what he said. Because remember, the Thursday night games are now going to be on Amazon.
Who asked him or not? I'm just asking.
Yeah. They're going to be on Amazon, right? And this is Amazon's first season with Thursday night football. And so he was asked if, they put Amazon ahead of the health and safety of their players. And he said, I don't think we're putting Amazon over our players' interest. We look at data with respect to injuries and impact on players. I think we have data that's very clear. It doesn't show higher injury rate. I hear from a lot of players directly too. They have 10 days off afterwards, so there's some benefits on that side. And Rob, this data goes both ways. We've talked about it in regards to the NBA and baseball, with pitchers especially, how regardless of I don't see how the data tells them to give these players rest. They can't play 82 NBA games. They shouldn't be playing back-to-back. They shouldn't be pitching and throwing 100 innings and so on and so forth. And yet, as they're not doing that, the players are getting injured more than ever. More than ever. But here's the opposite side, Rob. And I don't care what the data, honestly, you can't tell me. Thank God players aren't getting hurt more on a short week's rest, right? But I mean, to me, it takes common sense. This is football. You've been on the sidelines of a football game in the pros, Rob. I've been on the sidelines of an NFL football game.
Right.
It looks brutal.
People have no idea. Television distorts.
Oh my! It
sanitizes.
It sanitizes.
Right. It's like, Chris, you've covered fights.
Yes, same thing. You're right.
I sat ringside and I'm flinching watching the guys get hit. Like, that's how brutal. Like television
doesn't
just
it look like every punch hurts in boxing?
Yes.
When you're there,
when you're there,
you're on the TV watching TV. It looks like very few of them hurt.
Right. It doesn't look like it looks like they're just going pop, pop, and it doesn't look like anything.
Right.
But if you sit there up close, and as I said, I was ringside, and I'm flinching because I'm like watching a beating here, and I do think that too in the NFL when you watch, and I've been on the sidelines, I've seen the speed of the game, people coming, a pile of humanity, Chris, coming at you. It's incredible.
I played through high school, up through my whole 4 years of high school. And when I was on the sidelines for the NFL game, the speed and the size of the players and the way they were hitting, Rob, again, somebody who, I'm not saying I played at an ultra high level, but I played, in high school in Ohio, which is a great football state. And it was like stunning how brutal it was. And so for you to they need their rest. That's why fighters don't, you get to a certain level, you're not fighting every week. You're taking weeks off. Sometimes, you get to the highest level, months off in between fights because your body needs to rest. And Rob, the NFL makes money hand over fist. Is every single decision have to be about making more money?
That's where you get in trouble. It really is. Some things can't be for sale. I say it all the time. Like, you can't sell everything. It's okay not to take every nickel especially when you're putting players' safety and their livelihoods or their longevity, Chris, in harm's way when it's not necessary. If it was up to the league, they would play 20 games. You know what?
No,
I
Rob,
believe that.
We said it last night. Like, how long before? That 18 games I don't think that's dead. They'll wait a little while and then bring it up again in a few years. And then more. Because if they keep making money, they're going to keep wanting to make more. And just like I would say to Lamar Jackson, look, I know in your heart of hearts, I wouldn't say it necessarily just yet. You can wait a while. But at some point, I would say, in your heart of hearts, you believe you're worth more money than Deshaun Watson. In your heart of hearts, you believe that going out there playing for anything less, you're being underpaid and undervalued. But at some point, don't let your pride get in the way of you still making generational wealth for you and your family to play a game of football. At the end of the day, you still got to realize, you know what? Even if I'm not getting what I believe I should get, this is still phenomenal. And it's the same thing. I would say the same thing to the owners. You're putting your players at risk. I don't need data to tell me that they need longer rest. And don't, because Rob, if you start seeing really good players, and we talked about quarterbacks getting hurt, then what? It's not going to be the same. Sports need the superstars, Rob. We're going to talk about it with the Final Four.
We know that
the ratings have been dropping because they don't have the names.
As I said, they probably would. And I said that, Chris, as it goes on, people were intrigued at first. And then, depending on the matchup, and we will talk about it, I don't want to get into it, but it'll be interesting to see how the national championship game plays out depending on who's in it.